Welcome to the Young Turks. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian, and we have a giant show ahead for you today. In fact, one of the segments that, to be quite honest, I'm not really looking forward to doing, but I think is important to talk about are my corrections in regard to the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. There have been some mistakes made in our past reporting of that story, and I want to make sure that I correct the record because giving you guys the facts of that story and any story that we cover is incredibly important. So we're going to be doing that in the first hour today. Later in the show, we're also going to talk about how Donald Trump is very, very upset with Fox News for announcing that Glenn Youngkin won the gubernatorial race in Virginia. Now, that's accurate information, but we'll get a load of what Trump is upset about in regard to how Fox News reported that story. So that's a little later on in the second hour when John Iadarola joins me. And my favorite story of the day today has to do with a giant, satisfying fail by Zillow. Yes, that real estate website where you can go to find all of the listings of housing in the area you're looking at. And there was just a wonderful wrinkle to that story involving Zillow that I just can't wait to share with you all. So that's in the first hour as well. As always, please like and share the stream if you're watching us online, or click on that join button if you're watching us on YouTube to become new YouTube members. Our bonus episode today is probably my favorite bonus episode in a long, long time. We're gonna talk about a marathon runner who had an insane accident during the marathon, but she persevered. Who is she? What happened? Is it disgusting? The answer is yes, but you want more details. That's gonna be for our members in the bonus episode. And I'm, again, really, really looking forward to it. And also, a voter in Virginia surprised a Fox News host on her views regarding critical race theory. That's also in the bonus episode today. But before we get to all of that, let's start off with some of the results from last night's elections. So, Democrats are losers, and as expected, they'd rather blame progressives for their failures rather than take personal responsibility for the awful campaigns that they ran. Now, let's see who some of the losers are. We go to Virginia, where Democratic incumbent Terry McAuliffe unfortunately lost to GOP challenger Glenn Youngkin in the gubernatorial race. Youngkin ran in the Republican primary for the gubernatorial race as someone who was closely aligned with Trump. And then after winning the Republican primary, he switched gears and kind of distanced himself from Trump and really presented himself as someone who could appeal to independent voters in that state. Terry McAuliffe disappointed Democratic voters in the state of Virginia, and as a result, he did lose support among key demographics, including the African-American vote in Virginia. He had precipitously lost support among the Black vote in Virginia, and I think that's important to focus on, not because of just any particular demographic, but for the reasons that we're hearing from the voters who had previously supported McAuliffe or ended up voting for him anyway, even if they felt incredibly disappointed by him. So again, Youngkin really went out of his way after the Republican primary to present himself as someone who was more palatable than Donald Trump, a wealthy former private equity executive making his first run for office. Youngkin elevated education and taxes while projecting a suburban dad demeanor to demonstrate he was different from Trump without saying so outright. And of course, Donald Trump did in fact endorse him for this race. And you then go to New Jersey's gubernatorial race, and look, it was not supposed to be a close race. Democrat Phil Murphy running against Republican Jack Ciattarelli, and the race was incredibly close. In New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy, who had been expected to win easily, is in the fight of his life with Republican Jack Ciattarelli. The post-midnight appearances before supporters, or in those post-midnight appearances before supporters, both said that they expect to win. That's how close the race has been so far. And so again, like, Democrats are failing. I mean, we're seeing failure on a national level. We're seeing failure in the local races that we're talking about here. And as Cenk and I predicted, the Democratic Party decided to focus on the very individuals within their party who actually champion incredibly popular policies. So here is a video from last week, I believe, October 28th. It's me and Cenk talking about what we can expect when the Democratic Party faces a bloodbath, a political bloodbath in the midterm elections. Let's watch. I can't wait for the dominant narrative that will emerge during the 2022 midterm elections.
Can I predict it? You haven't said it. Progressives cost us the election.
100%.
Everybody knows it. 100%. And then you'll see it, and then everybody will say, oh no, everybody was surprised. We'll say we said it here for years.
And look, we're talking about the midterm elections there, but what happened in the country last night, yesterday, was just a little appetizer, a little tasty taste of what's to come in the midterm elections. The Democratic Party and its brand not doing so well, because guess what? Just relying on running against Donald Trump or fear-mongering about the other party is not enough. You need to find issues to galvanize your base around. You need to give your voters a reason to show up to the polls and cast a ballot for you. And unfortunately, Terry McAuliffe, a bland establishment Democrat, did not manage to do that. And that's not based on my opinion. That's based on what we're hearing from individuals in the state of Virginia who either decided not to vote at all, or if they did cast their ballot for McAuliffe, the only reason why they did it is because they wanted to avoid the damage that would be caused by someone who'd be far worse, Glenn Youngkin. But again, it's all about damage control, or it's not worth it, I'm not gonna show up to vote anyway. That's the dominant messaging that we're getting so far from Democratic voters out of that state. But going back to how the Democratic Party is blaming progressives, they're certainly getting a lot of help from corporate media. I turn to Axios first, where they write on Twitter, from Virginia to New Jersey to Minnesota, voters sent Democrats a warning for 2022. There could be a massive backlash to perceptions that progressives are pulling the party too far left. So just let that sink in for a second. You have Biden's Build Back Better agenda, which had all these provisions that polled so well that even Republican majorities in some states favored those provisions. But the takeaway from Axios, because they're talking to failed Democratic strategists, is that no, it's actually the popular policies that are championed by progressives that are hurting the Democratic Party. No focus on what we've seen from Senator Sinema or Senator Manchin in destroying the possibility of those popular provisions passing. No discussion about the corporate corruption that we see within the Democratic Party. No discussion about how the Democratic Party has failed to deliver anything. I mean, they promised police reform, that's gone, that's not gonna happen. Democrats claimed that they were gonna make it happen, not gonna happen. They didn't pass the reconciliation bill. And of course, what we heard, the dominant narrative in the press over the last several weeks was that Democrats essentially stripped out the popular provisions, including paid family leave. Now, I'm gonna get back to my thoughts, my read of this whole situation in just a second, but I do wanna give you some more from Axios. This is the actual headline from the article that was linked in the tweet that I read earlier. Voters punish Democrats amid left drift. How are we what left drift? What left drift? There's a left drift? There are finally some progressives in Congress who are demanding more, but they just folded to the demands of corporate conservative Democrats like Manchin and Sinema. What left drift? I mean, is there any policy that's been carried out that demonstrates a left drift? I don't think so, but let me give you more. So they write in Axios, a senior aide to a New Jersey Democrat told Axios's Alana Treen, it's insanely clear the party must reorient, not on center left or progressive goals, but on what gets real things done for families. A senior aide to another House Democrat, moderate specifically, which probably means conservative, told Axios's Hans Nichols that it's clear that passing a historic bipartisan infrastructure deal months ago would have energized President Biden's numbers, and that House progressives who stalled that vote had hurt McAuliffe. Yeah, that's right, because ordinary American voters are sitting around and thinking about roads and bridges. That's really what gets them motivated to show up to the polls. Oh, that road or that bridge that might be repaired, maybe. That's enough reason for me to show up to the polls. Oh, turns out that there's a huge percentage of our public infrastructure that could be privatized through this awesome bipartisan infrastructure bill. Great, I love Democrats. I'm gonna show up and vote based on that. Now think about what Glenn Youngkin ran on. He ran on schools. Yes, the critical race theory narrative, the made up culture war was part of that. But he focused on other elements of education in the state of Virginia as well. Remember, there are so many parents out there who were furious at the fact that schools were shut down and they remained shut down during the coronavirus pandemic. When you look at the demographic that supported Terry McAuliffe, you'll notice that white educated women, college educated women, disproportionately supported McAuliffe. But when you're talking about voters who don't have a college degree, these are individuals who are more likely to be forced into going to work, right? They're not able to work from home. So these are parents who, they have essential jobs, they have to go to work, they don't have the choice of staying home and watching their kids as they're forced to stay home as a result of the school closures. And think about the rage and the fury that leads to, right? And so Glenn Youngkin ran on that, and that message resonated. What did Terry McAuliffe even run on? Trying to disprove critical race theory? Well, what Terry McAuliffe did was essentially allow Youngkin and the GOP to frame the issues that were up for debate in this election. Instead of taking charge and fighting back with an economic populist message, something that would actually communicate to voters in Virginia that he's gonna do something to materially improve their lives, he decided, no, I'm gonna let Youngkin set the tone and I'm just gonna constantly play defense because I've got nothing else to offer my voters. That's what happened with Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe. Anyway, let me give you more. Then there's Anderson Cooper on CNN who asked this question.
How much of this is a message just the Democratic Party that it's too far left? I mean that if you're the Squad or if you're someone who's been calling for defund police or socialism or democratic socialism.
So that's the dominant narrative that you'll see in corporate media. There's one small caveat to what I'm saying here though. So you have Anderson Cooper mentioning defund the police and how that could be a liability in these elections. And there is some truth to that. And I want everyone to think about that on a very basic level, okay? If you are an American who has to cobble together several jobs just to make ends meet, everything is incredibly overwhelming. There's a lot of anxiety as a result of the pandemic. You don't have the time to sit down and pore over data regarding crime statistics and what is causing crime. And to be sure, there is an uptick in crime. Not in one part of the country, not in a few parts of the countries. There has been a rise of crime throughout the country, And so if you're an ordinary American and you're experiencing that in your community, and the dominant messaging from the Democratic Party is defund the police, well, you're gonna think, well, that seems pretty counterproductive considering the fact that we're seeing an uptick in crime. And then on the other hand, you have the Republican Party blaming Democrats for defunding the police, even if they haven't done that yet, and saying, hey, you're experiencing that uptick in crime because they defunded the police, and look at this is just a failed Democratic policy. It's ripping your community apart. And that's a powerful message from the right wing that was not accurately or aggressively countered by McAuliffe or any Democrat who was being challenged by a Republican yesterday. That is an issue. We see the GOP playbook so clearly, and Democrats just haven't been able to counter it. It's really sad and pathetic. Now, what I loved was Van Jones on that very panel with Anderson Cooper, because there was a moment of clarity, and this is what it looked like.
If Terry had been able to stick on a message of economic progress, family leave and minimum wage and that kind of stuff, and maybe we wouldn't be making this argument. In other words, there was an economic message from the Democrats that was available and was necessary given the rising costs. But what happened is we pulled out of our own federal bill all the family leave stuff. You're undermining the economic message for Terry McAuliffe and leave him with Trump is bad and vaccine mandates are good.
I think Van Jones hit the nail on the head there. I think he's 100% right. And it's not even about Van Jones and his personal opinion. It's about what's reflected in the comments that we're now seeing from the voters in Virginia. So believe it or not, you also have some Democratic strategists and some in the media blaming black voters in Virginia for what happened last night, which I think is particularly pathetic, okay? So why don't we take a look at what happened and why voters in that state decided to either sit it out or, if they did vote for McAuliffe, they were very clear that they did it, not because they liked McAuliffe, but because they were terrified of Youngkin. But before I do that, just to really buttress Van Jones's point, something interesting happened in the House today. So we found out that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, in a major shift, announced on Wednesday that 4 weeks of paid family and medical leave will be added back into the social spending bill, that's the budget reconciliation bill, after Democrats had previously scrapped the provision from the package. Adding a version of the leave policies back into the package brings back to life a central and popular, let me just say that again, and popular plank of President Joe Biden's initial proposal, and comes as Democrats try to unify over their messaging after suffering a significant loss in the Virginia governor's race. Now look, I've learned my lesson with the Democratic Party. I think Pelosi had a moment of clarity and realized, oh my God, we need to actually offer our voters something so we don't get clobbered in the midterm elections. Do I think that the 4 weeks of paid family leave is likely to get anywhere? Probably not, because Democrats will always fall victim to moneyed interests as long as, first of all, they're personally invested in individual stocks, but more importantly, as long as they engage in the system of legalized bribery. That's not gonna change. And if that's not gonna change, I don't have many hopes for really robust policies being passed by this feckless, pathetic party. But I do also want to talk a little bit about what voters in Virginia had to say, because they did give some interesting comments to the New York Times. So these are black voters that they spoke to. As I mentioned, Terry McAuliffe, who was the incumbent governor in Virginia, he lost and he kept losing support among black voters precipitously leading up to the election. At the grassroots level, writes the New York Times, voters in Newport News also said that their support for McAuliffe did not mean they were satisfied with the performance of Democrats in Washington. Several voters cited a radio advertisement that had been playing on local stations saying black voters should not back McAuliffe because Democrats cared about black communities only during election season. Now here's the important part of the report. They rejected the ad's plea to stay home, but said the general theme resonated. And they urged Democrats in Congress to pass bold legislation on President Biden's core campaign promises, including climate change, police reform, and economic investments in black communities. I mean, if you're gonna run with all of these robust promises and then fail to deliver and think that voters are gonna forget about it, you'd be mistaken. And I think McAuliffe is learning that the hard way. But let me give you more. One voter told the New York Times, a man by the name of William Joyner, a Democrat, a lot of people are upset with Biden. We have high gas prices. Everything is so expensive right now. Biden made promises to black people he hasn't kept yet. And the Democratic Party, I mean, it's hard to deny, have absolutely taken the black vote for granted. One more voter from Virginia, Tony McWright, who says this: Republicans are happy to come together to do the wrong thing, but Democrats never come together to do the right thing. I think that the corporate Democrats need to have a day of reckoning, and unfortunately, they're unwilling to do that. They're unwilling to look at the data, look at the facts, listen to their voters, and figure out what it is that's making them fail. Instead, they're doing what children do. They're looking for a scapegoat. They're looking for someone else to blame. And what's incredibly sad is they've decided to point fingers at the very members of their party who happen to be the most popular because they champion the most popular policy proposals. And I wish they fought for those policy proposals a little harder, but the idea that those are the people that the establishment Democrats need to go after is laughable. It just gives you this, it's foreshadowing, especially for the midterm elections. We know it's gonna happen because the Democratic Party learns the wrong lessons over and over and over again. They're partly paid to learn the wrong lessons through this system of legalized bribery. They partly get terrible advice from these awful Democratic strategists, some of whom spoke to the Axios for that awful article. But if Democrats really want to win in the future, again, they need to give their voters something to vote for. Because Trump can't always be the boogeyman, and relying on scare tactics about Trump is just not gonna work, especially when he's not on the ballot. Anyway, we gotta take a break. When we come back, we've got more news for you, including my favorite story of the day, the most satisfying business fail. Come right back. What's up, everyone? All right, so I want to do a little bit of housekeeping because there are some programming notes that you should be aware of. So some of you come to TYT's main channel in order to watch the live stream of the damage report. However, starting Monday, November 1st, which means that this went into effect this week, we're not doing that anymore. So in order to watch the damage report live, Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, just go to youtube.com/thedamagereport. I promise you will not regret it because John is awesome. He has incredible guests on, and it's just an all-around fantastic show. So check that out. Also, really great news. Brett had a much-deserved vacation for the last 2 weeks. However, he is back, which means that tonight, on our Twitch channel, you can watch Happy Half Hour, hosted by Brett Ehrlich. So it's immediately after our bonus episode, and the brackets are back. We're doing Best Bond Movie for the Battle Brackets tonight, Brett writes. So check that out at twitch.tv/TYT immediately after the bonus episode. Also, I wanted to note that we have, well, we'll get to this other announcement later. Let me actually read some comments because I want to make sure we get to as many as possible. Eclectic Miscellanea writes in and says, Solo Anna for the win, thank you. Sexy Speed Racer says, Terry McAuliffe was a Clintonite, good riddance. Of course, the people of Virginia will be the ones who pay the price, sadly. That's right. What's the Antimatter writes in and says, they lost because they wanted paid family leave, bad on us. Yeah, I know, it's just, what American voter is like, oh my God, this party wants to give me paid family leave? That's awful, I'm gonna vote against that. No, it's a popular policy. They should have really fought for that and championed it. I do declare says, blaming progressives for the millionth time in a row. Losers blame others for their failures. Using the Hillary Rodham Clinton strategy by offering nothing worked great in 2016. I know, it's amazing. Going over to our super chats, Peter Hamby writes in and says, blaming progressives, weak Democrats, search scapegoats, shows your cowardice. Stephen Matthias says, when it comes to GOP versus corporate Dem campaigns, it's not a race, it's a relay. They love to hand off the baton every few years so that nothing gets done. Unfortunately, that's what it seems like. In our Twitch community, we've got Frank Morning Tree who gifted 10 subs. Thank you so much for that. Metal Turtle gifted a sub as well. Thank you. Flash Gordon, 11 months, tier 1 with the comment, almost a year, woohoo. Moved to Miami for grad school this summer. Do y'all have any food recommendations? Look, the only food recommendation I have is vaca frita, because you're obviously in the epicenter of Cuban food in America. And also, I'm forgetting what it's called. Maybe Brett will remember because he's got a really good Cuban friend. They're like these fritas. It's called fritas. So just go to a Cuban restaurant, look up one that has good ratings and have those two things, vaca frita and fritas. A lot of fried situation going on, but I promise you will not regret it. All right, let's get back to the show. Back to TYT, DJ Bart Kyle on the ones and twos.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and we've got Craig Lowry manning the set as stage manager today. All right, just a quick note about the the paid family leave that I briefly referenced in the previous segment. I mentioned that Pelosi is putting 4 weeks of paid family leave back into the reconciliation bill. Well, I just read from Matt Brunig on Twitter, and he does a lot of great analysis for the People's Policy Project. Definitely check him out. He writes, the newly reinstated paid leave provision has been modified to include a brand new eligibility rule not contained in any prior version. The rule is targeted directly at the lowest earners in the workforce who are now explicitly excluded from eligibility. So I just want to I want that to reinforce the fact that Democrats have learned nothing from what happened yesterday. Also, for our Twitch viewer who asked about good food in Miami, look up some croquetas, as Brett mentioned, because I love me some croquetas, okay? So definitely check that out as well. All right, well, let's get back to the show. We do have some good news, although there is a negative twist to it. But don't worry, let's just celebrate the good, okay? Zillow, one of the many real estate websites people go to find listings of available homes, is now trying to offload thousands of homes it bought during the pandemic when there was this massive home buying bonanza. Now, why? Why would they want to do this? Obviously, because they're losing money with this real estate that they now have possession of, which just let that sink in for a second, okay? Zillow managed to lose money in the housing market when the housing market is doing tremendously well for people who have the capital to buy houses. They're losing money. They're losing money. I mean, if that's not a fail, like the biggest fail in business for the year, probably. But let me give you the details. This is what happened. So in August, there was an arms race among tech companies that were trying to buy up as much real estate as possible as housing prices exploded across the country. Zillow bet big, telling investors that it planned to buy thousands of houses throughout 2021 and turn its homes division into a $1 billion business. So we've seen this happen with a number of massive companies, right? So they'll buy up single family residences and they'll either flip those homes or, as private equity firms have showed us, they'll turn them into rentals to essentially corner the rental market. In this case, Zillow was planning on doing this mass flipping operation, right? Where they'll buy a bunch of homes, they'll spit on some tile and put it up on a wall, and then they'll sell it for an insanely inflated price. Well, apparently they didn't really think this through. So as a result, as the summer came to an end though, it seemed like Zillow's offers business was also cooling down. In October, the company told investors that it would stop buying houses, citing construction, renovation, and closing labor shortages. Now, Bloomberg, however, speculated that it could also be motivated by excess inventory and reported that Zillow seemed to sell a good number of houses at a loss instead of a profit. So what is Zillow planning to do now? Now Zillow is looking to offload around 7,000 of the homes it bought. Now there's a twist to this story that isn't so great, but let's just take a moment to really absorb what we've learned and celebrate it. because I love seeing them fail in this regard. Because what Zillow and other companies like Zillow are doing in order to maximize their profits, of course, is they're taking housing out of an already limited inventory of homes. And I know that we're in such an awful economic situation that most working people in this country already had difficulty affording homes, buying their own properties. However, when you really think about it, the only vehicle in which middle-class Americans or working Americans could build wealth in this country was through home ownership. And these kinds of companies, including private equity firms, have made it more and more difficult throughout the years for that vehicle for wealth building to come to fruition. And that enrages me almost more than any other issue in the country right now. Because it's also led to, there's a domino effect. It's also led to an increase of people within the rental market. And you look at rental prices and they've shot up as a result, right? Because again, there's limited inventory in both the housing market where you can purchase homes and also the rental market. Now, what is the negative twist to the story? Here it is. The company is trying to sell the homes to, you guessed it, institutional investors like Wall Street firms to the tune of $2.8 billion. Investors made up about 20%, that's 1/5, 20% of the home buying market in 2020. And Zillow says that it and its competitors made up around 1% of the housing market in the second quarter of 2021. 1/5 of the housing market is a massive and influential chunk, and it absolutely is. There's no other way of putting it. And this trend of institutional buyers, okay, so the private equity firms, the BlackRocks and all of that, they were really empowered by the policies that were passed under the Obama administration. So when we talk about the lopsided economic recovery following the 2008 recession, that was very much the result of policies that put Wall Street first, that prioritized the best interests of Wall Street while essentially screwing over ordinary Americans who should have received some sort of relief so their homes weren't foreclosed on. But that's not what happened. So by 2016, as a result of Obama-era policies, 95% of the distressed mortgages on Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's books were auctioned off to Wall Street investors without any meaningful stipulations. And private equity firms had acquired more than 200,000 homes in desirable cities and middle-class suburban neighborhoods, creating a tantalizing new asset class, the single-family rental home. And the numbers have just gotten worse. And we see it play out in the housing market. All of us notice it. So over the next 7 years, so starting in 2016 and over the next 7 years, strategic acquisitions culminated into Blackstone subsidiary Invitation Homes, making Invitation Homes the largest single family rental company in America. And with almost 80,000 homes after Blackstone sold its shares at the end of 2019. Okay, so think about the number of homes just this one private equity firm has. And it's just one. You're seeing copycats popping up doing the same thing that Blackstone is engaging in, and it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster for the housing market. It's an absolute disaster when you consider the already limited inventory of houses. And there's nothing being proposed by Democrats, by the way, who are in power right now to mitigate this. Absolutely no regulations, no policies, because when it comes to neoliberalism, the government only intervenes on behalf of moneyed interests, but never on behalf of ordinary American workers. And that's just how this system works. So when Democrats are curious as to why people hate them so much and why they're losing so much support among the working class, it's because this kind of garbage happens under their watch due to some of the policies that they pass, and they just completely ignore the issue as if it doesn't exist. So can you understand the rage in the country as a result? I know I can. All right, well, let's move on to Amazon because there is some sweet justice after all when it comes to Jeff Bezos and the business practices over at Amazon. Hundreds of thousands of Amazon drivers will now be repaid nearly tens of millions of dollars, okay? Nearly $60 million in tips that the company had stolen from them. Now, the FTC actually investigated this case, the Federal Trade Commission, and here's what happened. The FTC and Amazon reached a settlement with the company, agreeing to pay more than $61.7 million, the full amount the tech giant already withheld, which will be used by the FTC to compensate Amazon Flex drivers. So the money was actually withheld from these drivers in a short period of time, a relatively short period of time, between 2016 and 2019. Now, if you are someone who purchases groceries, for instance, on Amazon Fresh, you will get a little notice when you're doing this transaction that you can give the driver a tip and 100% of the tips will go to the drivers. But that is not what was taking place, okay? So the consumer was being lied to and the workers, the drivers in this case, were also being lied to. So flex drivers, I wanna be clear, are different from typical Amazon delivery drivers. These are people who are independent contractors. They operate based on an app where they get to select different orders that they will deliver, usually grocery orders and things like that. They use their personal vehicles to do it. There are some strict rules in regard to what their vehicle can be like. It has to be a certain size, for instance. It has to be under certain conditions. And they deliver goods and groceries ordered through Amazon Fresh and also Prime Now. Now, rather than passing along 100% of customers' tips of drivers, as it had promised to do, Amazon used the money itself. And that's according to Daniel Kaufman. He is the FTC Bureau of Consumer Protection Director. And he obviously investigated this case and helped to secure the settlement that Amazon has agreed to pay. Now, in its initial complaint, the FTC said Amazon used tens of millions of dollars in customer tips to subsidize the payments to drivers and continue to divert drivers' tips during this time, despite hundreds of drivers' complaints about the practice, critical media reports, and internal recognition that the conduct was a reputation tinderbox. So like, not only were they engaging in this practice, there was communications internally where people were like, yo, I know we're doing this, but this is gonna lead to some bad press if we get caught. And of course it did, which Amazon fully deserves. And so the FTC is now sending out 139,507 checks and 1,621 PayPal payments to drivers. The average check for Amazon Flex drivers included in the settlement will be about $422, but 19,980 drivers will receive checks for more than $600. But get this, the highest amount is going to a single Amazon Flex driver to the tune of $28,000. Imagine being that worker and finding out that $28,000 that was supposed to go to your pay was purposely, viciously withheld by Amazon. It's just so gross, but this is how they operate, of course. They gotta maximize profits, and the way they maximize profits is by screwing over their workers, the very people who make their operations run in the first place. But I'm really happy to see that the FTC looked into this, they investigated this, and are now returning that money to their rightful owners, the workers. So with all the bad news that's going on today, let us just soak this in and let us enjoy it. We'll do it during the break. When we come back, we'll have some more stories for you, including admissions that I failed on the Rittenhouse story a little bit, and I wanna clear the record in regard to the facts of that case. We'll give you an update on the trial, and then later on in the show, we'll talk about the reality of workers, firefighters, cops threatening to resign due to vaccine mandates. Do the real numbers bear that out? We'll give you the details on that and more. Come right back. to say thank you to Leith. This is a very generous super chat, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. And I'm happy about the super chat and how generous you are, absolutely. But it's the comment that makes me incredibly happy. Okay, let's see if you guys can figure out what it is about this comment that I love. Solo Salt Queen. As a disappointed Virginia voter, it would have been hard to be less enthused to vote for McAuliffe. However, Youngkin will set us back in every way unless you're a wealthy, white Christian male. P.S. Anna, your cheekbones are epic. I keep meaning to mention that. I do have pretty good cheekbones. Anyway, love to hear it. Anyway, let's thank you so much for that super chat. That was fantastic, and I really appreciate it. Pons Gambit says, Anna, please don't be salty. At least Jeff Bezos was indirectly thankful to those drivers he tried defrauding for paying for his trip to space. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine being that rich? Like, and by the way, that successful as a corporation, and then feeling the need to steal tips from your workers who are already being abused? I mean, but there is no bottom. There is no bottom. R. Stone says Democrats want to blame voters for their failures, but Democrats had a voting rights bill that they didn't even fight for. Absolutely true. Watch what happens when the GOP has the majority again. All right, I also wanted to just quickly announce that we are always expanding and looking for new voices here at TYT. And so we are looking for new content creators for Rebel HQ. We're looking for people to write, produce, host, and also edit short form editorial videos on breaking news, political stories. So if you're not familiar with Rebel HQ, definitely check out that YouTube channel and see the kind of content that's being produced there. And you'll get a better idea of what we're looking for. You don't have to necessarily agree with all of the content creators there. You can have your own takes, but that's what the channel is really about. So some of the video creators that we have there now include the wonderful Adrian Lawrence. We've got David Schuster, Richard Ojeda, or Ojeda, depending on how you want to pronounce it. And so I love that channel. I think that there's a lot of great content there. So if you're interested, definitely check that out. And pretty soon we'll give you guys some more information on how to apply as a content creator for Rebel HQ. All right. Warata Dragon says Zillow losing money in the rentals market or retails market is as funny as Trump losing money owning a casino. It's just so good. Anyway, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian with you. Let's give you guys an update on the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, where I will make some corrections that are definitely worth correcting. So let's get into it. The Kyle Rittenhouse trial is underway, and in his opening statements, the defense attorney for Rittenhouse, Mark Richards, argued that his client was not in any way some dangerous murderer, but he was there in Kenosha, Wisconsin, a state that he does not live in, to essentially protect the community, and then he found himself acting in self-defense. So let's hear what he had to say, and I'll fill you in with some more details.
Mr. Binger makes a big thing out of Kyle Rittenhouse was the only person who shot somebody that evening. True. Mr. Rittenhouse was the only person who was chased by Joseph Rosenbaum that evening. The evidence will show he thought probably that he could get that gun from Kyle Rittenhouse. He was wrong. Kyle Rittenhouse protected himself, protected his firearm so it couldn't be taken, used against him or other people. from Mr. Rosenbaum, who'd made threats to kill, and the other individuals who didn't see that shooting attacked him in the street like an animal.
So to give you some more of what's happening in the case so far in the trial, the New York Times reports that when he went downtown on the third day of protests after the police shooting of Jacob Blake, Rittenhouse was there to clean graffiti and help protect the city from more destruction, his lawyer said. So, there are, of course, legitimate questions as to why Rittenhouse was there, especially since he's a resident of Illinois and really had no business in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So what his lawyer is trying to do here is make the case that he acted in self-defense in using his weapon. And he's also trying to explain why Rittenhouse would be there in the first place. Richards, the defense attorney here, turned to the people who were shot by Rittenhouse, characterizing them as hostile and belligerent. So what we had shared with you earlier in regard to the judge in this case, allowing the defense attorney or the defense to use that kind of rhetoric to kind of paint a picture of the very people who were shot and killed, that is playing out. However, as we had also shared with you earlier, the prosecutors are not allowed to use the word victim when referring to the individuals who were shot, including the 2 who were shot and killed by Rittenhouse. Remember, there were 3 who were shot, 2 of whom died as a result of him opening fire. Now, here's what allegedly happened that night, according to the defense attorney. After Rittenhouse shot Joseph Rosenbaum and fled down Sheridan Road away from the scene, he was chased by dozens of people, including, here are the 2 other victims, right? Anthony Huber and Greg Grosskreutz, okay? As citizens who were trying to stop an active shooter. The defense characterized them as aggressors. Now, Huber, according to the defense here, Huber bludgeoned Rittenhouse with a skateboard, Richard said, and a man who was captured on video but never identified jump kicked Mr. Rittenhouse in the face. So look, these details do matter because this stuff is caught on camera. You do see it in the video, someone taking a skateboard and hitting Rittenhouse over the head with it as he's on his back. And I haven't seen this video yet, but it was already, the New York Times says it's on tape. There's someone captured on video, someone who has not been identified, kicking Rittenhouse in the face. So look, these details matter because if you're gonna make an argument that you acted in self-defense, there needs to be some proof that there was an imminent threat. Right, and in this case, the imminent threat is the guy using the skateboard and someone kicking Rittenhouse in the face as he's on his back. Now, what really mattered to me was how all of this unfolded. What was the thing that sparked it? What started all of it? And initially, I was under the assumption that Rittenhouse was the person who was chasing after Joseph Rosenbaum, that's how it had started. But I was wrong about that. Okay, so I want to correct the record. I was in fact wrong about that. And to show you the evidence, to reinforce that I was wrong about that, I want to go to this video that shows how everything really started.
Here is where we first see Joseph Rosenbaum, the first person Kyle Rittenhouse fatally shoots that night. He joins the fight against the armed civilians, as other protesters tried to stop him. Rosenbaum has just been released from the hospital after undergoing mental health treatment. His reasons for being here are unclear, and he doesn't appear to have attended a protest before. But his actions on this night will add to an already volatile situation. Rittenhouse walks towards a parking lot where cars are being vandalized. He passes Joseph Rosenbaum, who was fighting with the armed men at the gas station earlier. Rosenbaum now starts chasing Rittenhouse and throws a plastic bag that holds his belongings from the hospital. Close behind them, a man holds up a handgun and fires it. We don't know why. Then Rosenbaum lunges towards Rittenhouse. Rittenhouse fires 4 times.
So those details matter, right? Who was chasing who matters. The gunshots by some other unidentified person, that matters, especially if you're Rittenhouse and you're running away and then you hear shots and then Rosenbaum lunges toward him. So the question is, in a court of law, is it considered reasonable for Rittenhouse to act in self-defense? Was there a legitimate threat there where Rittenhouse would reasonably want to defend himself by opening fire? That is what's going to be debated and deliberated upon, okay? Other details I wanted to share with you about this case. So he's facing 6 charges. Here's what the charges are. First degree reckless homicide, first degree recklessly endangering safety. I mean, remember, you have members of militia groups there with open carry, which is legal in Wisconsin. You have him running around with this gun, like literally running around with this weapon. So that's one of the charges he's facing. You have first degree intentional homicide, attempted first degree intentional homicide for the shooting of Gage Grosskreutz, who was wounded but is still alive. You also have possession of a dangerous weapon by a person under the age of 18. I want to make a correction on our previous reporting on that issue as well. He did in fact hold possession of a firearm that he was not legally allowed to carry, okay? It is illegal for him to have it because he's 17. However, previously it was reported that he had obtained the gun in Illinois and then crossed state lines into Wisconsin with that illegal gun. Now it turns out, based on an investigation, that there was an individual who sold the gun to Kyle Rittenhouse in Wisconsin. So he did not cross state lines with an illegal gun, but he had an illegal gun. Okay, so do with that information what you will. It's important to know the facts. Those are the details. Now let's talk about what these charges mean. First degree intentional homicide is analogous to first degree murder in other states. It's defined as causing the death of another human being with intent to kill that person or someone else without the presence of certain mitigating circumstances specified in the law. Rittenhouse faces this charge in connection with the fatal shooting of Anthony Huber. It is a Class A felony that carries a basic sentence of life in prison. Now, after Rittenhouse opened fire and killed Rosenbaum, he then ran away from the scene, and there were protesters there who were like screaming. You can see it in video. They're screaming at him and they're like, "Why did you shoot him? Why did you shoot him?" And there were other protesters who reasonably believed that Kyle Rittenhouse was a threat because he had opened fire. They might not have known the circumstances of how that all went down, but they saw him as a threat, and that was when they were trying to take the weapon away from him. And that was when he opened fire, and in the process of doing so, shot 2 other individuals, with one of them getting injured, surviving, okay? And then the other, Huber, dying as a result of the wounds. So those are the details as we know them now. And again, I want to reiterate, though Wisconsin is an open carry state where it is legal for adults to carry firearms openly, state law prohibits minors from doing so. Rittenhouse was 17 at the time of the shooting. This crime is a Class A misdemeanor that carries a basic sentence of up to 9 months in prison, a fine of up to $10,000 or both. I think that charge is pretty open and shut. Like, I mean, he's 17, he has the weapon. I think there's a lot of evidence indicating he has the weapon. So I don't see how he would be let off on that charge. But the other charges, based on what we're seeing in video and based on the case that the defense attorney is making, shaky, okay? Now you can question why Rittenhouse was there. There were members of the Boogaloo Boys there. Obviously, it looks like they were there to cause trouble. They argue they're there to protect the community. But one thing that's abundantly clear to me based on the reports I've seen, the videos I've seen, the cops did absolutely favor the armed militia groups or militia members. They offered them water. At one point, they pushed the protesters and the members of the militia in the same area, very well knowing that that could lead to a physical altercation or an eruption of violence. And Rittenhouse, despite the fact he opened fire that night and killed 2 people, was not taken into custody that night. He was taken into custody the next day. He was allowed to leave that night. And I just question if the same treatment would be given to a protester who did the same. And I wouldn't want that. Anyone who opens fire should probably be taken into custody, should be investigated immediately. That didn't happen. And I question why the cops decided to push both groups of people into the same area, very well knowing that these are opposing groups and you have open carry and a pretty dangerous situation brewing. But we'll give you guys more details about this case as we learn them. Again, I think it's important to know the facts. And for my previous inaccuracies, I apologize to you guys. Obviously, it was not intentional. And I want you guys to know what the details are. It is what it is. All right, we've got one more story for you, and this is about a narrative that we've been seeing play out over and over and over again in regard to vaccine mandates. We hear a lot of threats from both workers, but also, people like cops and firefighters indicating that they're gonna resign if they're forced to take a vaccine. But data does not bear that out. So, union leaders representing the New York City Police Department surfaced warnings about thousands of them quitting if they're forced to undergo vaccine mandates. Now, we're now learning that despite their threats, many of them did not actually resign as a result of a vaccine mandate. Only 34 of the nearly 35,000 NYPD officers were placed on unpaid leave on Monday of this week after the deadline for a COVID-19 vaccine mandate passed, in addition to just 40 civilian NYPD staff out of roughly 17,000, the police commissioner said in a news conference. Now, in total, 85% of the NYPD staff are vaccinated. Seems like the vaccine mandate was a success, but let me give you more. Overall, about 9,000 city employees were placed on leave without pay on November 1st or by November 1st. Out of a workplace, though, of more than 300,000 people, while roughly 12,000 had applied for a religious or medical exemption to vaccination and were waiting for a response from the city. So those are the numbers, and I think it's relevant to know, what the proportion of, people resigning is compared to what we're hearing in the press, or compared to the talking points that we hear from the right wing. But city officials are hopeful that the individuals who are refusing to get vaccinated will change their minds. In fact, Bill de Blasio says this, now remember at any given hour, any of those 9,000 can say, wait a minute, I'm willing to get vaccinated and come back. And we saw over the weekend a lot of that happening, thousands of people changing their mind, coming back. Now, among firefighters, the numbers are a little bit higher, okay? So as of Monday morning of this week, 2,300 firefighters were out sick, which should be under 1,000, fire commissioner said on Monday. And this all happened from the day the mandate began to now. And we're also finding that last week, a judge denied a request from the largest police union in New York City, the Police Benevolent Association, to temporarily halt de Blasio's order requiring all municipal employees to receive at least 1 dose of the coronavirus vaccine or face unpaid leave on November 1st. The union says that taking the coronavirus vaccine should be a personal choice. But despite all of this, again, about 92% of the city's employees had in fact received at least 1 dose, including about 2,000 in the past 24 hours. This is based on a report, by the way, that CNN put out earlier this week on Monday. So, between Sunday and Monday of this week, we have, 2,000 workers, municipal workers, agreeing to get vaccinated. So look, I think that context is important because a lot of stuff gets sensationalized in the media. Yes, there are some people who resigned, but when you compare the population of those who refused to get vaccinated and decided to resign, and you compare it to like the overall workforce of municipal workers in New York, obviously the media coverage that really focuses on those who refuse to get vaccinated is really disproportionate. Like it doesn't really make much sense. And so I am also pleased to see that in the courts, these vaccine mandates are not being struck down. You are seeing people who might see the vaccination status as an identity issue, but when push comes to shove, whenever it comes to their livelihood, they'll end up getting vaccinated because they don't want to lose their jobs. So that's what the facts of the matter happen to be. That's the truth on the ground. And when you see the media reports, just put it all in perspective, look at the numbers, because that's where it matters. All right, we're gonna take a break, but when we come back, John Iadarola will be joining me for the second hour. I wanted to have a little fun today, so it's gonna be a little different from what you guys are used to. We've got some fun stories, some not so fun climate change related stories as well, but you're gonna love it, don't miss it. We'll be right back.
I'm old enough that I remember when Captain Crunch put the berries in it.
Yay, crunch berries!
And I was like, ooh, the fake berries.
Remember?
We're gonna try that.
We did a story back in the day about how a woman sued, I don't know, General Mills.
She'd been eating it for 4 years,
right,
believing that it was actual berries.
Yeah, she's like, these aren't real berries at all. Yeah. I'm like, I got news for you, Captain Crunch isn't really a captain or a person. Joining me now, legendary whistleblower and American hero, Edward Snowden. First question is, hey, where are you?
I'm in my apartment in Moscow.
All of a sudden, in the studio, Jim Gaffigan, everybody.
Mental illness is, completely undiagnosed in our society.
It's not about a particular administration. It's about a broken system of power, and through that, really, the instrumentalization of a system of not justice, but injustice.
People understand whether they claim to deny climate change or not. Our collective house is in crisis. We're also dealing with the legacy of 40 years of economic policies that have made people's lives more precarious.
Sometimes you got to force people into their humanity. Sometimes you have to shake people into empathy.
Senator Elizabeth Warren joins us in the studio.
Healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights.
In order to actually achieve that vision of everyone having access to the same resources and getting to determine the outcome of their life, we have a lot of work to do, and it needs to start right now.
Here's something you may not know. When you deposit your money in a big bank, it doesn't just sit, safe and secure, in a vault. Instead, your money could end up building oil pipelines, mining for coal, or drilling in the Arctic. So if you're concerned about the planet, give your money something good to do. Make the move to green with Aspiration's fossil fuel-free account and join the thousands each week who are switching to save their dollars and save the planet at the same time.
Welcome to the Damage Report. I'm John Iadarola. This is gonna be a big one.
What Donald Trump has done as president has cut taxes for the wealthy and made life better for rich people. But he's made life worse for poor people.
We're making America great again by throwing more money at the military to destroy other countries, because that makes us great instead of investing it in ourselves.
That it's Donald Trump and it's Stephen Miller. The choosing is based on wanting to create cruel and inhumane conditions to scare other people away from ever coming to the United States.
The opportunity to make money off of tragedy is the American way.
There is only one place to put garbage people: in the trash.
We've never had so much access to so much information with so little idea of what the hell is going on.
What does enforcing our borders have to do with traumatizing children? Absolutely nothing.
I think a sane person could say the current situation we have right now is radical. But what we're doing is literally making the world more like hell. That's a warning sign.
ShopTYT.com now has books. One of them is Ryan Grimm's book, We've Got People. That's a saying that AOC said, they've got money, we've got people. It's the best tracing of the AOC victory I have seen anywhere. It's the most accurate, and it's got great details. The book actually goes all the way back to Jesse Jackson and how he's the original Bernie Sanders. If you want to know how we're going to win going forward, those lessons are super important, and they're in Ryan's book. So check it out right now at ShopTYT.com.
We found the perfect person to lead the army.
Allison Hartson.
The establishment media works hand in glove with our corporate legislators, and our corporate legislators work hand in glove with the corporation. And we're going to make it so that it's a decentralized force throughout the country so that we can quickly identify stories, quickly identify troll farms, and go in and neutralize the enemy, and then start building responsible media throughout the country and on every platform available.
Welcome everyone. Anna Kasparian and John Iadarola with you.
Guess who's who?
How you doing, John?
I'm good. Yeah. We were out really late last night to see Ida Rodriguez's awesome Fighting Words screener, which was awesome. But it was also a Tuesday night. I do not stay up late on Tuesday nights, so I'm groggy. I took a short nap in the middle of the day, and it still has its claws in me.
Oh, that sucks.
I'm gonna try to wake up though. We'll see what happens.
No, I feel you. I left as soon as the party started. So all of the stuff that was important, I was there for. And then I was like, it's almost 10 o'clock at night. I'm in downtown LA right now. By the time I get home, it's gonna be 11. Because I also had to, I hadn't eaten anything and I broke my fast.
Yeah.
I had to, so.
Oh yeah,
had
we had those delicious little sandwiches
pretty late at night.
Yeah, I left within 5 minutes of it becoming the club. I was out. And I think, honestly, me and you leaving at that point is an important part of the party starting. I think everyone else was pretty much waiting for that to happen.
Don't let him do that to me, okay? I don't fall under that category. If I didn't have to worry about work today, I would have definitely enjoyed myself there. But I had to get going. All right, let's get to our next story because I specifically put this in the second hour for you, John, because you are your beat. If I had to give you a beat, it would be climate change.
I am very interested in it. Yes.
Yeah, you're probably in my opinion, the best host here in covering climate change. So I'm excited to talk about this with you. So let's do it. Climate scientists are urging action in response to climate change, and one way that they're helping people visualize just how devastating climate change is they're noting that there are 9 major cities around the globe that could be underwater as soon as 2030. Not in the year 3000, not 50 years from now, in the year 2030. And we're not talking about some small island nation that you've never heard of, which we should still care about, but most people unfortunately don't. We're talking about major cities by 2030.
Yeah.
Let's start with Europe. Well, first, let me give you some more details, okay? Because this is what we're hearing. A lot can change between now and 2030, of course. We could build flood defenses, adapt our cities, and ideally take dramatic action to halt global warming. But if none of that happens, which is a likely scenario, here are the potential consequences. 9 cities that could find themselves entirely or in large part underwater within a decade. They begin with Amsterdam. And the cities of Rotterdam and The Hague sit low, flat and close to the North Sea. The Dutch are famed for their flood defenses, and looking at these sea level projections, it seems the country's system of dikes, dams, barriers, levees, and floodgates will become even more essential in the years to come. Okay, so this is their way of saying, look, you guys have been pretty great in mitigating the damage that's being caused by climate change, mitigating the flooding that's being exacerbated by climate change. You're gonna have to keep that going. In fact, you gotta accelerate that, or else you're not gonna be able to live in this area because most of it will be underwater. But there's more. Let me give you one more example and then you can jump in, John. We've got Iraq. Iraq's main port city of Basra lies on the Shatt al-Arab, an enormous and wide river that feeds into the Persian Gulf. Due to its intricate network of canals and streams, as well as the neighboring marshland, Basra and its surrounding areas are especially vulnerable to a rise in sea levels. And as As if that wasn't worrying enough, Basra already suffers significantly from waterborne diseases, so increased flooding carries even more significant threats. And of course, there are some American cities on this list as well, which we'll get to in just a second. But John, I know you care a lot about this issue, as most people should.
Well, I'm glad that you had those two as the first two. So, I mean, look, Amsterdam's a great example of one of the states that has historically had to deal with this for a very long time. And they have built-in defenses, as places like in Louisiana, some cities have that, New Orleans has that, but they are not designed to deal with the severity and the frequency of the flooding that's going to come. And once we move beyond just the flooding, once we're talking about permanent sea level increase, that's not a cyclical thing that happens throughout the year. They are not designed to permanently hold off the ocean. That's just not how it works. So cities like that are probably people are gonna have to move. They're gonna have to leave. Now, I'm not too worried about them. As Ben Shapiro has pointed out, they can just sell their property right before they leave. So financially, they'll have a leg up to move somewhere else. It won't cause any chaos or anything like that. But Basra is a good example of one of the other issues. So the flooding isn't just that water comes in and drives people away and destroys infrastructure. That's terrible enough. But assuming that you're at the point where conceivably once the flooding goes away, you could re-inhabit that area. It's not just like you dry it out and you're good. Do you remember Texas had massive flooding?
Yep.
In Houston, I have a friend who lives in Houston. There were major problems with mold coming out of the flooding that they had.
Yes.
That was huge health hazard for so many people, and you'll be shocked to find out that it's going to hit people who are already doing not well economically even more. And so you can expect that. It's going to, in certain areas of the world, as they said with Basra, it's going to bring certain diseases. You're gonna have areas that are gonna have worse problems with pests like mosquitoes and things like that, as well as mold. This is gonna cause massive damage in terms of quality of life as well as damage to infrastructure, and it's only gonna get worse. And I'm so glad that you're focusing on this because it points out that this is not just a 70 years from now thing. In fact, we're seeing some increased flooding in places like in Florida and stuff like that already.
Exactly. I mean, when you look at the amount of money the United States is now spending on any given year to just respond to climate-fueled extreme weather conditions, right? These natural disasters. You see how stupid our unwillingness to pass policies really is, right? And so we have Joe Biden at this climate conference. He's back now. And to be honest with you, like I had no interest in hearing anything he had to say at that conference because it's all BS. I mean, because we know what's happening here at home with the reconciliation bill, which included previously a provision that was pretty good, right? A provision that would really incentivize utilities to switch over to renewable energy. But Manchin didn't like it because Manchin profits off of coal, and as a result, he persuaded Joe Biden and corporate Democrats to strip the bill of that provision.
Wait, do you not own a coal company? Because you just said that it would be good to incentivize them away from coal. I don't understand why you would think. Are you one of the few people without a coal company in your holdings? I guess I'm one of the few people. I mean,
everybody's saying that they have investments in coal.
It's good to own coal. I know.
It's insane.
But like think about that. Like decades from now, we'll be able to look back and think, well, America could have led on this and really moved away in a vigorous fashion towards solar as well as wind energy, which would have not only been better in fighting climate change, but would have also helped fight against pollution. We often forget about pollution. Pollution kills literally millions of people around the globe every single year. That's just a nice side effect you get from fighting against climate change. You also kill the pollution. But Joe Manchin wanted to make some more money. And I know what you're thinking. What does he need it for? He's already a multimillionaire, but I don't know, the number looks nice when it's bigger. So if a couple million people need to die, Joe Manchin's got to get richer.
So I promised that I would get to some of the US cities that will be impacted, that are already impacted by climate change, but according to this new report, will be underwater as soon as 2030. So New Orleans, of course, is on that list. Let's go to graphic 4. The city's system of levees protects it from future sea levels up from Lake Do you know how to pronounce that?
I assume it's Maurepas, but I'm not sure.
All right, Lake Maurepas in the north from Lake Salvador and Little Lake in the south. Without those defenses, New Orleans would be severely threatened by rising sea levels. But even with them, the damage looks catastrophic. The Biloxi and Jean Lafitte Wild Park reserves look particularly vulnerable on the map. Both appear almost totally submerged. So they also shared a map that showed what these areas look like. And as we know, climate change has already severely impacted New Orleans. And I want to go to the last graphic here. And everyone, please check out this report. Unfortunately, we don't have time to get into every single city that was noted here.
Those visuals are crazy.
The visuals are crazy.
Yeah, you might live in one of these cities and you can see the areas that are considered at extreme risk.
You also have Savannah, Georgia. Georgia sits in a hurricane hotspot, but even without extreme weather events, the historic city could see land swallowed up by the sea on all sides. The Savannah River in the north and the Ogeechee River in the south could both spill into the nearby marshland, meaning when hurricanes and flash floods do hit the city, the effects may even be more severe.
Yeah.
So this is what we're dealing with, right? And so when we use the phrase of like privatizing gain, socializing losses, we already see that play out, especially on the issue of climate change. Our tax money helps to fund the necessary relief efforts that are taking place after these extreme weather conditions take place. On the other hand, these fossil fuel companies keep pocketing the money that they're making off of drilling, off of fracking, off of mining. And there's really no genuine discussion about stopping all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and look, we're supposed to believe that our government, especially the Republican Party, are very concerned about national defense. Generally, that means they want to go and invade other countries. But supposedly they're ready, if necessary, to defend us. So what if it was Iraqi militants? Iraqi militants have been they've been taking over a lot of ground around Savannah, Georgia. Every year, they're taking a little bit more. And you know what? In New Orleans, Iraqi militants come in a couple months every year and they kill a few people, they destroy some territory, and then they back out. But they'll be back next year, and every year a little bit worse. Would we allow it if it was that? If it was Turkish soldiers, if Chile was invading and taking over these areas? Oh, they just took out Miami. It's not habitable anymore. Would we allow it for that? Then why are we allowing it for this? This is also far more predictable than some sort of military conflict. It's also totally within our grasp to do something about it. We can actually mitigate these effects. We can help the people who are going to be suffering. Many of them Republicans, by the way. This feels a lot like the pandemic. It is us screaming to the heavens to save the lives and livelihoods of conservatives that don't give a damn about us.
Yep.
But this damage is coming. We're seeing it every year.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up the pandemic because just yesterday I was talking to Cenk about this. It was on the show, and it was a little bit of my doomerism, but I think the pandemic is a pretty good indicator of what we plan on doing in response to most crises and disasters. And climate change is a perfect example of that. Yeah.
And there's no vaccine for flooding.
Exactly.
Or wildfires.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got to take a break. When we come back, Josh Hawley is crying about porn. Very important that we discuss that, so we will. And then later in the show, yes, we will be giving you an update on the QAnon-ers who gathered on the grassy knoll in hopes of a JFK Jr. return. Did it happen? We've got that story and more. everyone? Welcome back to our social break. I want to thank our new YouTube members. We have many of them today. Super excited about that. Belliard, thank you so much for being a new member. We have Reginald Daniels, we have Phyllis Masters, we have Christine, Carl Ingalls, Michael, and also Joel Gonzalez. Some of you had last names that I didn't even attempt to pronounce because I did not want to insult you by butchering them. But thank you for being new YouTube members. We're gonna have a super fun bonus episode today. There is a little bit of a surprise for John, and since it's Wednesday, that could only mean one thing: ice cream party.
Is that the surprise?
No. When is the ice cream party on Wednesdays ever a surprise? It's a surprise for you. I don't know if you're gonna like it, but I like it. It's funny.
Oh no.
It's gonna be so great.
Now I've got anxiety.
You can become a member by going to tyt.com/join or just click on that join button if you're watching us on YouTube. All right, let's go to our members where we have Mr. Arrogant, Blackstone, BlackRock, Blackhawk. What's the deal there? Yeah, it is true. Like all of these companies, all these corporations that do awful, shady things.
Yeah.
Starting off with black in there, like like BlackRock, Blackstone, BlackRock.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, remember, they're still started up by humans.
What was? Yeah, of course. No,
they think these things sound cool and intimidating.
What was the name of that private contractor that Eric Prince was behind? Do you know what I'm talking about? This was years ago during the Bush administration. They've done a bunch of rebranding.
I will find out. Yes, they did.
Anyway, he'll look into that.
That's why they did the rebranding, is to produce what we're feeling. Blackwater.
Blackwater.
Yeah.
That's what
I wasn't sure if it was Blackwater or Blackhawk. Yeah.
All right. Colorado Blue Blazer Regular says, I'm sick and tired of these settlements, meaning the settlement with Amazon after they were withholding tips from their drivers. These are outright thefts. Absolutely, by these ghouls, and the FTC settles most likely for pennies on the dollar, and the crooks don't have to admit their criminality. F them all. You know what, Colorado Blue Blazer Regular? I gotta say, usually I'm the one who is not persuaded to celebrate stories that seem to be very positive, seem to be a win. But I congratulate you for taking that role today because look, you're right. But the reason why I'm happy about it is because the workers are going to get their pay, their tips given to them after they've been stolen. So there's real like financial, I don't want to say relief, but justice in this case in terms of them getting their tips back. Jess B. Anti-Racist says, before Scott Walker was elected, open carry was not legal in Wisconsin. Elections have consequences. And we've got the Dragon who says, The Hague, that's convenient, can't get charged with crimes against humanity if the court is underwater. That's a good point. Very good point. All right, Twitch subs. Thank you to our Twitch community. We have Lou Cinda, who's been subbed on our Twitch page for 13 months, tier 1.
Damn.
Yay, the only salt I'm allowed in my diet. That's really funny, thank you. And we gotta get back to the show in 10 seconds. One more then. Half Dead Shepherd Dragon, new sub with Prime. Thank you for being Prime subbers. We love you guys, and we gotta get back to the show. See you there. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. Let's get to our next story.
Many men in this country are in crisis.
Yes, that was right-wing Senator Josh Hawley, the very individual who wanted to present himself as this populist who's really, really concerned about the economic anxiety of workers in this country. But the fact of the matter is, he's just like any other right-winger who really just wants to focus on whether or not you're living a good moral life based on his own standards of morality. Now, I would argue he's not a very moral person based on my standards of morality, but that's a different story. We'll get to that a little later. First, I want to get to this weird speech that he gave recently about American men and how society is now forcing them to feminize themselves. He also whined about porn and the like. So why don't we start off with the first video? Let's watch.
The left's attack on America leads directly to an attack on men. Can we be surprised that after years of being told that they are the problem, that their manhood is the problem, more and more men are withdrawing into the enclave of idleness and pornography and video games?
Ugh.
Okay, so I have thoughts that I want to share, but John, I'm going to open it up to you first. What do you think, as a connoisseur of video games? Do you feel that you're being attacked?
Yeah, well, look, as someone who long ago receded into idleness and pornography and video games, which sounds like, honestly, it sounds like a pretty good staycation. I don't knock it till you tried it, Josh Hawley, and I have a feeling aside from maybe the games, I don't know, he doesn't look like a guy who really enjoys himself. He's probably tried a few of these things, idle hands and all that. Anyway, what? How lame? No, seriously, how lame? Like, I know that he's supposed to be the future. It's not really working out. GOP like primary voters have no interest in him whatsoever, but he's supposed to be like the new thing, and he is making an argument that is indistinguishable from any random Republican back in the 80s. Seriously, you're all lazy, you like porn, and you like video games. You know who that describes? Most people for literally decades.
That's right.
Porn isn't new, it's just sharper, it has more clarity.
It's easier to access without, feeling a little shy and having to go to like a physical brick and mortar place to buy. Okay, let's just let that sink in for a second. Imagine a world, this existed, where you have to go to a store where there are other humans, and then you purchase the pornography that you're then gonna spank the salami to. And everyone knows it. Everyone there knows it. I know it, you know it, the American people. How insane is that?
Hello, sir, would you please ring up my fetish?
It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know, it's weird. Although for some people, honestly, that interaction might be part of the charm. I don't know, not for me. No, porn isn't new, video games aren't new. And even before video games, people wanting to enjoy themselves isn't new. It might come in different forms from time to time. My dad made a rowboat back in the day, and you know why he did that? So he could sit in a rowboat in the water. Some would describe that as an idle thing that he was doing. I don't know if there was any porn on the boat, and there certainly weren't any video games unless he brought like a Game Boy or something. But people just like to enjoy themselves. Back in the day, they used to play pool. They would sit around drinking whiskey. These are not new things. And Josh Hawley, it's impossible to imagine that he is so stupid that he doesn't understand how ridiculous an argument he is making. So what I have to assume is that he's at least marginally savvy and he believes that you are stupid. And when I say you, I mean mainly young men. Young men who are worried about the world. They don't necessarily know exactly how they fit into it. Another thing, by the way, that is not new. This has always been true. It's a little bit more public right now, but there are a lot of guys out there that are trying to figure out what they want to be, what it means to be strong and independent. And unfortunately, more and more of them are being preyed on by people like Josh Hawley, people like Joe Rogan and Ben Shapiro, these guys that give them this concept of what it means to be strong, the core element of which seems to be being really worried about what other people think about you constantly.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I think that it's a problem though, because I think that the anxiety that you're referencing here among men, young men especially, is very real, right? And you see it kind of playing out when it comes to college enrollment. For a while now, you've had more women enrolled in colleges than men. They are feeling anxious about their futures. Most people are, let's keep it real. But you're right in that they're trying to find their place in society, and they get preyed upon in that moment of vulnerability by individuals who actually, when you really think about it, are going out of their way to insult these guys as these losers who have nothing going for them. They're just sitting around watching porn and playing video games all day. But no, let's take a step back, because Josh Hawley is a lawmaker, right? So why don't we take a look at the economic conditions and the precariousness of work in this country and what the future looks like for young people overall, right? But they don't want to address that. Instead, let's look for the scapegoat. Let's look for the scapegoat. And in this case, I don't even know, is it the, traditional thing that right-wingers do where they're like, it's the feminist's fault or something? I don't know. Like, who are you blaming?
Well, no, it's definitely blaming feminism, 100%.
It's just so stupid, it's stupid. Anyway, it's beyond stupid, right? And when we talk about masculinity, look, I'm just gonna keep it real. I have my personal preferences and I hope no one begrudges me for it, right? I like masculinity. Like I like traditionally masculine men. And when I say that, I in physical appearance and blah, but that's just my personal preference. That doesn't mean that I'm okay with men going around and taking advantage of women when they're drunk at college parties. Like, we need to differentiate the two, right? There's a difference between what people are actually wanting to better society, which is, hey, why don't we protect people who have been victimized by sexual assault and rape? That is very different from what Josh Hawley and other right-wingers characterize it as, you know? So there's one other video I want to get to, and here he talks about manly virtue, so it should be fun.
While the left may celebrate this decline of men, I, for one, can't join them. And really, nobody should. The crisis of American men is a crisis for the American Republic. It's not just that millions of men out of work slows our innovation and our economic growth. It's not just the billions of dollars in welfare payments these idle men cost the federal fisc year on year. It's not only the depression and the darkness that now shadow so many. It's that liberty requires virtue. And in particular, it requires the manly virtues.
Look, what guy is gonna listen to that? And he just insulted you guys. Like, for conservative men who watched that and like somehow missed it, the economy sucks because of the policies that lawmakers like Josh Hawley champion. Because of the pro-corporate policies that they've backed that have led to jobs being shipped abroad, that have led to consolidation among companies, these massive corporate mergers that shed hundreds of thousands of well-paying jobs, manufacturing being shipped abroad to take advantage of cheap labor in other countries. Those are the things that our lawmakers have done. And Josh Hawley is a lawmaker. But instead of focusing, like a little moment of self-reflection for all the failures that these idiots have engaged in, he's like, no, he just said, these idle men, they're costing us so much money with the welfare. He just insulted them.
Yeah.
When it's their policies that have led to people living in these awful economic conditions in the first place.
Yeah, how many conservatives lost their jobs over the past couple of years because of the pandemic, which by the way was made worse because of politicians like Josh Hawley, and he is now spitting in your face because you have the temerity to expect the government that you've paid into your whole life is going to help you a little bit during your darkest hour. He thinks you're pathetic. Look at you, you're sucking off of the teat of the government. It's the darkness that's shadowing you. None of it makes any sense. He gets paid like $175,000 a year to give speeches like that and insult you. Does that seem like hard work? Is that pulling yourself up by your bootstraps? These men that like are trying to create these compliant, submissive alphas, the ones who do whatever their boss wants, never cost them $1 more than they need. Tucker Carlson was handed a fortune. He was born into wealth and given a media career. What's alpha about that? You're talking about idleness. Joe Rogan, his whole thing is smoking weed and chit-chatting with his buddies.
Yeah.
Well, we wouldn't want like idleness, obsession with pornography. Ben Shapiro wrote a book about porn. Dude, I can save you a lot of time. Jack off and move on. Like, you're spending months writing a book. You're analyzing, doing videos about Cardi B. I get that you're masturbating during the video. Finish the job and move on with your life. There are bigger things for you to address. It's okay to want role models. We all need role models. These are not them.
I also just want to note that for a party that always whines about virtue signaling online, it is funny to hear a Republican senator talk about the importance of manly virtues.
Yeah,
yeah. So, all right. Well, that was fun. That was a great rant. I mean, I enjoyed it.
Thank you. I hate what they've done to so many men.
But it's the feminists' fault. You know, the powerful feminists in the country. Anyway, let's move on to The Walking Dead. So, hundreds of QAnon followers gathered on the grassy knoll in Dallas in order to await the reemergence of JFK Jr. And they also believe that not only would this be the great return of JFK Jr., it would also be the great reinstatement of Donald Trump as president of the United States. And many of them did gather. And what happened? Well, a post from a wildly popular QAnon account said that after Trump is reinstated as president, he will step down so Kennedy Jr. will become president. The post also claimed that the former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, would be appointed as JFK Jr.'s vice president, making Trump the king of kings. Which, I mean, look, I don't understand. It didn't happen. It didn't happen, but they believe, and I'm sure that they'll find some excuse for why it didn't actually come to fruition. So far, there's really no explanation as to why Trump would usher in a Democrat as president, right? Okay. Also, I do want to show you a little of what the event looked like. This is captured by journalist Stephen Monticelli.
It is almost 12:29. Any minute now, the big reveal. The crowd is big, ready to go.
Also, here's a sign in support of JFK's return. So, look, there were a lot of people that Trump Kennedy. Where we go one, we go all, 2020.
But it's not 2020 anymore. Like, it already passed.
Is that real? I mean, look, it's from Reddit. I wanna.
No, it says let's go Brandon in the corner. That's obviously recent. I hope that that's an old flag that she's like, well, I'll get around to updating it someday, but you gotta use the flag. I had this printed up at Kinko's. It costs like $200. I'm gonna use it. But
we're doomed.
Guys,
there were a lot of people, there were a lot of people there.
Yeah, that was a pretty good crowd.
It was not a small group of cranks. Like, it was a giant group of people in Dallas who genuinely thought that JFK Jr. was going to reemerge. Apparently, their theory is that JFK Jr. is still alive, but the deep state is like hiding him or something.
I thought he went into hiding because of the deep state. But here is the thing, he obviously has not been around for a few decades. Notably, I was thinking, man, how old would he be? He would actually still be younger than Biden and Trump. We have some old politicians currently serving. But you guys haven't heard from him in decades and decades. Why do you want him to be president? You don't know anything about what he thinks about anything.
Look, I'm not even done with the hot goss. I got more details about the event.
Okay, let's hear the goss.
All right, so some audience members, as reported by the Daily Beast, became frustrated by their leader's refusal to peg the Kennedys' reappearance to a specific time and date, the result of an apparent effort to avoid a single moment of crushing disappointment. One Dallas resident pointed out that no parade permits had been obtained for the parade of dead celebrities that was supposed to follow on Tuesday afternoon. It's very important that you have the necessary permits if you're gonna, be resurrected from the dead.
Yeah, I love that's the moment where disbelief can no longer be suspended. Wait, you haven't filed the proper paperwork? Well, then why would Robin Williams and Dale Earnhardt Jr. come back?
But luckily, we've got a lot of great artwork regarding this event as well. Here's an artist's rendition of what the parade was actually supposed to look like. And unfortunately, they didn't get what they expected. So the list of celebrities
bring it on.
Supposedly
just bring it on.
I mean, I feel like we're already there. We're already there. Yeah. Okay. I remember years ago on TYT, Cenk and I were actually discussing the show, The Walking Dead, and what we would do if that actually happened in real life. I mean, ridiculous, right? But still, it's fun to imagine. I just want to die immediately. I don't want to fight the zombies. I don't want to live in a prison for a little while for safety. You could go ahead, zombies, come at me. I'm gone. Quality, not quantity of life, okay? Anyway,
yeah.
And the list of celebrities that were supposed to reappear, by the way, kept growing. So the list of returning celebrities grew long, coming to include not just the Kennedys, but also Kobe Bryant and Robin Williams, Debbie Reynolds, and race car driver Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, look, There's been a lot of analysis about sort of psychologically why they've focused on this dead celebrity thing. Yeah, I followed some people on Twitter who were talking about that. And like, look, when you make it explicitly about Trump becoming president, again, I lose interest, especially when it's you wanting people to become president that you have no idea about what they think about any social or economic policy since the days of Carter. But the fact that they just want all of these random celebrities that tragically passed to come back, and they like have created a worldview that gives them hope that would happen. It's like, it's deeply sad. Like,
oh, John,
that you just like, someday Chris Farley is gonna come back and Aaliyah's gonna walk down the street, and no, that's not how it works. And it's sad that you want that. Like, I feel sad. It's terrible when Robin Williams passes and all that.
But we have religion for that.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like, we have religion.
They need something spicier, unfortunately.
I guess so.
And up to that point, I can have a lot of sympathy for them. The fact that they organize it around QAnon, the central component of which is there's gonna be a great storm where everyone I despise gets rounded up and killed by Donald Trump. I lose a little bit of empathy for you at that point, though.
Yeah, so I just wanna end with this graphic. It's the last graphic in the story, because when we first talked about this story recently, I made a point about how it feels like there's someone just trolling QAnon supporters at this point, because it just becomes more and more outlandish. And I think there might be some evidence to that theory, because as Ben Collins points out, here's the really weird thing with this JFK Jr. meetup. Most QAnon followers take its ostensible prophet Q at his word. They share and cite Q's 8kun posts like scripture, citing things like drop, I don't know what that is, drop hashtag 1082.
It's a forum post from years ago, basically. And there's thousands of them, but they will cite them like scripture.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, Q has explicitly told his followers that JFK Jr. is not alive. So, and then there's a screenshot of that interaction. And so obviously they're being trolled. And I don't know. Maybe it's splintering into different, groups that believe different things. But I think the takeaway here is that this could have been a fun story, but John made it very sad.
I apologize.
By pointing out the psychological issues at play, which do make me feel really bad. Like, that's awful, and I don't want anyone to feel lonely and terrible. But it is funny at the same time.
Yeah, they just, everybody wants something that they can connect over.
Dude,
I think this is one of the worst things.
So great.
Totally get a dog. But also be ready, by the way. So in the same way that Republicans can never legitimately lose an election from now on, like, dude, if you're convincing yourself that like they thought they saw Michael Jackson in the crowd, well then get ready. When Trump finally chokes on a McRib or something, they're not gonna believe it. Millions of Americans will still think that he's alive for years.
The McRib is back.
It's back just in time. No, but seriously, you think these millions of Americans are gonna accept that Donald Trump, their God emperor, has died just because for 50+ years he's been in horrible shape and obviously is racked by the same sort of chronic illnesses that affect so many Americans? Eventually, he's an older guy. He's gonna pass, and they're not going to accept it.
And then what? What are they gonna do, exhume his body?
They're gonna pick some random person who vaguely looks like him in Cincinnati, and they're gonna follow him around the country.
Can't wait. All right, we gotta take a break. We'll be back with more stories that you don't wanna miss. See you then. Welcome back to TYT Social Break. Jules Genesis says, please do a follow-up on the mayoral race in Buffalo and talk about the corporate/conservative interests influencing the race. Pre-filled ballots, shaking my head. I haven't read about the pre-filled ballots quite yet, so I'll definitely look into that. But I will say this, so India Walton, who won the Democratic primary for that mayoral race, of course, ran as a socialist. She won, and the incumbent corporate Democrat refused to accept defeat. And so he ran with a write-in campaign and won. But there was a lot of right-wing money funding his campaign. So it wasn't just Democratic donors funding that campaign. It was also right-wingers because they wanted to defeat India Walton, a self-described socialist, from winning. So yeah. So I'll try to fit that into the rundown tomorrow. But yeah, great topic, and thank you for bringing that up. Jason Ray says, so should it be my personal choice to not stop at a stop sign when a cop is crossing the street? That was a cop denying me the right to drive where I want. I'm not sure, Jason, what that was in reference to, but I wanted to make sure to read your super chat anyway.
Probably something with vaccines. It's my choice. I'll do whatever I want.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So anyway, you shouldn't run anyone over. So
yeah, please don't do that.
Yeah, definitely stop at the stop sign. Jeremy Skiba says, sadly, before it gets bad enough for the climate change deniers to have to finally accept reality, it's going to be far too late to fix the problem. I mean, we're getting there. And it's not just about, it's not about climate deniers anymore. I think that there's widespread acceptance, even among right-wingers, that climate change is in fact happening. We don't have leaders. We don't have members of Congress who are willing to, forego corporate money in order to do the right thing. That's the problem. And then you have Biden talking to international leaders and claiming that, we're back, baby. The United States is back. We're not back. We were never there in the first place. What do you mean you're back? Anyway, so depressing. Miss Monster Mom, 6 months prime on our Twitch channel with the comment, 6 amazing months of actual news. Thanks, TYT. Thank you. Brandy Lou, 14 months on our Twitch channel, tier 1, and also gifted 5 subs. Thank you for the subbies. We've got T. Bartimus who gifted a sub. Is that you, Bart? No? Okay, it's someone else. Okay, sorry.
God, there's more of them. They're spreading.
Well, they do play funky hits, so I'm into it. Little Mac McG also gifted 5 subs, so thank you so much for that. Yeetwood Mac, in regard to Amazon stealing tips from its drivers, says this: they should have to pay double that they owe as retribution, double. I'm not gonna disagree with that. You're absolutely right. Also, Ghost Dog, in regard to Amazon stealing tips, no punitive damages means interest-free loan, worthless country.
Yep.
Don't say worthless country, because we're in this country and we can make it better. But a lot of worthless people running the show. We gotta get them out. All right, guys, we gotta get back to the show. We'll see you there. Welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and John Idarola with you. Let's get to our next story. Impeached twice, defeated once, Donald Trump nonetheless appeared on conservative media to take credit for Glenn Youngkin, the right-wing candidate, winning the gubernatorial race in the state of Virginia. He said this: I've heard Virginia is blue, but I've never believed it was blue. Without MAGA, Youngkin would have lost by 15 points more. Instead of giving us credit, they say, oh, he's more popular than Trump. So his feelings are getting hurt because
that's a shame.
It is undeniable that in the general election for that gubernatorial race, Youngkin did in fact distance himself from Trump to make himself appear more palatable to independent voters. Now, during the primary, where he's up against other Republican candidates, he did play up his Trump support and his Trumpiness. But in order to be more palatable to a broader base of voters, Youngkin did something smart, and he presented himself as someone who was just a little better than Trump. Let's just put it that way. Now, is he? I don't think so, but it's all about messaging, and his messaging worked. He beat the Democratic incumbent, Terry McAuliffe, and now Virginians are in for it. I'm not happy about that. Now, how predictable was this, or how predictable were Donald Trump's statements here? Incredibly predictable. What was not so predictable, though, was that Trump used his limited airtime to complain about Fox News's coverage on Youngkin and that gubernatorial race. Let's watch.
You know, it took Fox 30 minutes to call Virginia for Youngkin, 30 minutes after both MSNBC and NBC. What does that say?
Well, that's probably because maybe they wanted the Democrat to win. Who knows? You don't know. That's a much different place than it was a few years ago. When I ran in 16, now I actually did much better in 20 than I did in 16. As you know, I got 12 million more votes. But when I ran in 16, Fox was great. And now it's all they do is they put on commercials from the Lincoln Project, and others. Roger Ailes would never air a bad commercial. If he was with somebody, he would never allow the rhinos or the never Trumpers or whoever it may be to put on a commercial. And in all due respect, CNN does it either. If you wanted to go in with a good Trump commercial, CNN is a total fake. But if you want to go in with a good Trump commercial to MSNBC or CNN, you can't put it on. I mean, they won't take it. But Fox will take anything.
It's just...
That picture of Trump is so perfect.
It just fits the whole thing.
So Fox News accurately reports who won in that gubernatorial race. But Trump is salty about it because Fox didn't report the results soon enough.
Fast enough.
Okay.
Oh God, that whole thing was so sad for so many different reasons. I mean, Newsmax, actually, I saw a screenshot. They had a full screen graphic they made of who called it in which order. Because this whole thing, it used to be that these networks would, whether they ever deserved it or not, would imply that there was something more prestigious or serious about them than the masses of grifters. But now it's just that. It's just they're trying to fight with each other. We're the most pure. We deferred to Trump or Youngkin the fastest. It's pathetic. It doesn't mean anything. I love Donald Trump's thing about I did better in 2020. I got 12 million more votes. Yeah, but you lost. I can't say in my second marathon attempt, I beat my time. Now, in the end, I did have a heart attack, but I was beating my time at the point. No, you didn't win though, buddy. That's not how it works. It all has to be up to him. It burns in him that Youngkin did better than him. And look, the only reason that Youngkin did better than him is they got people worked up about unverifiable nonsense. But more important than that, Youngkin's not a known quantity. They don't have baked in knowledge about how horrendous he is. They should have known enough. The fact that he's worth $440 million.
He's a private equity guy.
Yeah, he worked for the Carlyle Group and for the same group that Pete Buttigieg did. Is this how you drain the swamp? Apparently in Virginia it is.
Right. Now, of course, Donald Trump never passes up an opportunity to speak against those who have left him aggrieved. And in this case, he's just super salty about former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, now the Senate Minority Leader. So what did he have to say about McConnell in this interview? Let's listen.
So if the Republicans in the midterms, if they take back control of the Senate, do you have any sense that there might be potentially, with your help, a new majority leader?
Oh, I think you'll have a new majority leader. Mitch is, I've always said he's the most overrated man in politics. I know him well. I worked with him. It took him forever to get me the wall, and then in the end he couldn't get it. So I got it. I took it through the military, and I got the wall. It took me a long time because him and Paul Ryan, they ganged up. And that was the group. How would you like to have to work with those two?
Paul Ryan didn't run for re-election because he was so badly out of place in the Trump era in the Republican Party. Like, but they ganged up. They ganged up everyone.
Yeah.
Mitch McConnell gave Trump everything he wanted, with one exception. One exception. He didn't whitewash what happened on January 6th.
That's really all it takes. Yeah, we work together. Yeah, there's a lot of working going on. Late nights, piles of paper, negotiations. No, he didn't want anything because he's not a serious person.
No, but hey, let's be 100% real here. He fought for things that his base, or at least he gave the optics of fighting for things that his base wanted.
You're talking about Trump?
I'm talking about Trump.
Well, they wanted a wall, that's true.
And also, Trump fought pretty hard and accomplished tax cuts for the rich.
Yeah, which maybe some of them wanted, they didn't benefit from it.
Right.
And also, by the way, Mitch McConnell totally loved those.
Oh,
so
of course.
It's like half of his presidency was in lockstep with Mitch McConnell, but Mitch McConnell once criticized him briefly.
More than half. I mean, 98% of his presidency was with Mitch McConnell carrying out exactly what he wanted, including ensuring that his federal judges got confirmed.
Yep.
So I just find it hilarious that you will eventually find a day where your Trump loyalism will bite you in the ass. It doesn't matter who you are. Even if you're one of the smarter, one of the scrappier lawmakers in the Republican Party. And Mitch McConnell certainly does fall into that category.
Yeah, look, I will say, I think it's gonna be very interesting to see to what extent other Republicans take from the Youngkin thing that they too need to run from Donald Trump. It's an open question about whether it'll work in terms of campaign strategy, but it'll almost certainly burn his blood that they're gonna be ignoring him. But it seems, yeah, they need the MAGA base, but the MAGA base are Republicans. They're gonna support the Republican candidate.
Yeah.
What's the benefit of having Trump with you and all of the baggage he brings? Any random Republican is gonna start out with better approval ratings than Donald Trump with all of his baggage. You're not gonna get independent voters. You're not gonna get a single Democrat if you have Trump campaigning with you. So I don't know, I think, look, they're almost certainly gonna do very well, but I don't think that they need Donald Trump or gonna want him.
Well, let's get to our final story because I found this fascinating. So, conservative radio host Eric Erickson is pretty tired of the MAGA crowd claiming that the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump. So following the Republican victories just recently, especially the Glenn Youngkin victory in the gubernatorial race in Virginia, Erickson wanted to make a point about how our elections are safe, they're secure, and that the 2020 election definitely wasn't stolen from Donald Trump. And he says it by admitting off the bat that he indulged in some bourbon. And so here's his Facebook rant. Erickson began the post by saying that he was fueled by bourbon and cold pizza following the wins by Republicans in Tuesday's elections and the Atlanta Braves in the World Series. I am very happy that the Astros lost. I'm just gonna put that out there. Now he says this in regard to Trump supporters. You idiots have spent a year peddling the fiction that the 2020 election was stolen because you were so busy humping Trump's leg that you never really even tried to convince persuadable voters to vote. He then pointed out Democratic losses as evidence to his argument, saying the Democrats literally lost Virginia, a state they fully controlled. They lost the judiciary in Pennsylvania, which they controlled. They lost down to freaking dog catcher across the nation. And he is right about that. I'm just really amused at how fed up he is with the Trump crowd. And then he finally ends with either admit the election wasn't stolen or shut the F up from here on out. John, thoughts?
I don't think they're gonna listen to him. I think they're gonna keep complaining.
They're concerned about what Eric Erickson thinks.
I saw a tweet from Brian Stelter who's like, Republicans aren't challenging the results. They did win, but they're not challenging the results. So it looks like they're gonna move on and go back to kitchen table issues. The hell are you talking about?
Oh my God, why? I mean, that's why they pay him the big bucks, that kind of analysis.
I know, and look, Trump said on the radio show that he was on, he says Youngkin winning in Virginia proves that the election was stolen in 2020 there. So whether they win or whether they lose, it proves that the Democrats steal elections. No word yet on why the Democrats didn't steal this one. It was like a 1 or 2 point election. Seems like they could have managed it if that's what they were doing. No, they're not moving on and they're not gonna admit it. It's too good. The entire Republican Party is about making people feel good and not have to think hard, not have to sacrifice. That's all the anti-mask and the anti-vax stuff is. Whatever you already believe is right, you're good, you never need to change, you're very special and I love you. That's all it is.
Yeah. No, and look, Erickson does close by saying this, to quote all of you when you talk about progressives, F your feelings, get with reality. And it is kind of amazing that you have a right winger providing better commentary and analysis than Brian Stelter on CNN. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is the GOP playbook here on out. And it makes the whole situation, our democracy, very vulnerable, because anytime they lose, it's gonna be this endless cycle of the election was stolen, we don't believe in the safety of our elections, and that is a huge problem. All right, bonus episode is next, don't miss it, tyt.com/join, see you there.
Our audience has given us everything, so we couldn't be more connected. When we first started, people would start giving us directions and say, okay, the mics are too large, move them. Turn them into lav mics. I mean, they were incredible. And then one guy walked in and gave us a really